If you have a bunion, you do not inherit it from one of your parents or grandparents. They don't just get passed down, they're not genetic. But in this video, we will be talking about some of the big contributing factors to bunions and some things you can start doing to help yourself if you do have a bunion that you want to improve. So a bunion happens when the big toe veers in and there's a gap in the joint here. And this long bone, the metatarsal, is usually veering in that way. So it's like a little zigzag. So usually this joint here is going to be more open, and then the joint down here is going to be more closed. And then this metatarsal head here, the first metatarsal, there's usually a buildup of bone here. So one big contributing factor to this foot shape is modern traditional shoes that have a narrow toe box. So most shoes are not made to allow your toes to spread and splay. So because they restrict the toes and kind of scrunch them in towards each other, that can definitely contribute to that bunion shape in your foot. I'm going to show you some different examples of shoes. So this is a traditional shoe with a narrow toe box. As you can see, this is not shaped like a real natural foot would not let the toes spread out. This is a minimalist shoe with a wide toe box. This is a field grounds drop top. As you can see, it's wider, allowing for more natural splay of the toes. This is very minimalist, very flexible, just offers a little protection for your feet, but allows them to function like pretty much like they're barefoot. And then this is an ultra, which is more moderate. This is not 100% minimalist, but it is a more natural functional shoe that has a wide toe box, allowing the toes to spread out. It does have more cushioning than a traditional shoe. It's not quite as flexible as a truly minimalist shoe. But this kind of shoe can also help if you want to start allowing your toes to spread out in your footwear instead of being scrunched with a traditional shape shoe. But often as we go, even if we go barefoot more or wear shoes with the wider toe box, our feet are so used to being scrunched together that often we need to help the foot to unwind from this position and kind of help the toes to spread out. So one thing you can do is some toe yoga. So you can put your fingers in between your toes as tolerated and wiggle them as far in as you can get, and then squeeze your foot with your hand and your hand with your foot a few times. This could be really uncomfortable in the beginning, so again, just do this all to tolerance. Then you can really firmly grip onto your foot and make some slow circles in each direction to tolerance, just starting to spread those toes apart and get them moving better. And then you can hold on to your first and second toes and do toe splits to tolerance, one direction, then the other, and then apart, and then move on to the second and third toes, and then just keep repeating all the way down your foot. Again, just more separation of the toes. And you can also try toe spreaders or toe socks that have the strips of fabric in between your toes, and you can just wear them while you're going about the house, just to add a little bit more of toe separating, toe stretching and separation of toes while you're doing some other activities. So those are some things you can start to do to get those toes spreading out and separating more instead of veering in. And also, you want to pay a lot of attention to your posture and alignment when you're standing and walking, and also your foot mechanics and your walking mechanics. So when you stand, if you have one foot that has a bunion that is more pronounced than the other, check to see if you have more turnout on that side. That would be common, and it's also common for that side to have a flatter foot shape. So for people like this, often when we try to stand with our feet straight, it feels tense and maybe tight in the hip, and it might feel like you're standing like this even though all you're doing is trying to stand with your feet straight. So that's a sign that there's an imbalance in your hip. You can also just turn your leg out, drive the movement from your hip and turn your leg out, rotate it out as much as you can, and then rotate in as much as you can. And notice if there's a big imbalance, like is it really easy to rotate out, but then when you go to rotate in, you feel like you're hitting a brick wall. So that's a sign that your hip is out of balance, that your rotation is easier rotating externally compared to internally, and working on that imbalance and getting better at going both ways can really help. And the real game changer is connecting the movements at your hip to what the foot does at a specific segments of your walking pattern, and that's where you really start feeling big differences. We're not going to go into that much detail today, but then to also pay attention to what's going on at the foot. Ideally, you can ground the tripod of your foot, big toe knuckle, little toe knuckle, and heel on each foot, and then when you rotate towards this leg, ideally that arch shortens and lifts, but the tripod stays grounded, and then the side you're rotating away from, ideally that arch goes lower and flatter, but the tripod stays grounded. And then when you switch, same thing, whatever side you're rotating towards, ideally that arch gets bigger and that arch gets lower with that grounded tripod. So if you get a dynamic foot on a grounded tripod, that significantly changes the way your feet interact with the ground and improves your walking pattern, which can help with bunions as well. And if you picture turning one leg out, whether it's coming more from the hip or more from this foot and ankle, if you're constantly pushing off with a leg that is turned out, with a foot that's turned out, as you can see, that puts a lot of extra pressure on that bunion area and can contribute to the bone building up there, where what we want is, if our posture is more balanced and more neutral, and then our walking mechanics are starting from a more neutral place, then we're pushing off through the whole front of the foot and right through that big toe, instead of around the big toe and really just bearing weight through the outside of that knuckle there. So this is more ideal. So this also shows another contributing factor could be that when you raise your toes up, if you cannot get your big toe, so keep the foot down and lift the toes up, if you cannot get the big toe extending 60 degrees, then that could be another factor, because if your toe, some people, maybe they lift 20 or 30 degrees, so then if you don't have a good amount of range of motion to push off, you might escape that by swiveling around. So that's an example where it might be more what's going on at the foot causing the turnout. So you want to pay attention to the hip and the foot and then connect it all. So what's going on at the foot with every step you take should be connected to the proper movements up the chain and to the hip and the core as well. So I hope this helps. Pay attention to your shoes, get those toes spreading out, pay attention to foot function, posture, and walking mechanics, and they all work together to help you have more neutral posture and more healthier foot and walking mechanics. And over time, the bunion can get better if you really stick to it. If you have any questions or want help with this process, my website is foundationsptwny.com, and on Instagram, foundationspt of WNY for Western New York.